Hello, everyone. Some of you may have followed me on Twitter, and if you do, you know that I am a staunch critic of postmodernism. Maybe some of you have known me for a long time if you're watching this. I've also known that I'm a staunch critic of postmodernism. I wanted to do a video here talking about postmodernism, mainly because I was inspired to talk about this from a podcast with Benjamin Boyce and Wokal Distance, and then a follow-up stream from Benjamin Boyce on his Saturday night stream. I'll link in the description about Benjamin pushing back on the critique of postmodernism because he thinks that there's a positive aspect of postmodernism. I will, of course, unprompted or unrelated to Benjamin, want to rebut this, that I don't think that there is a positive part of postmodernism, but I do believe that there was a potential for positive with postmodernism. So let me explain. So I think Benjamin was saying that he wanted to that there was a duality in postmodernism, that there was a positive and then there's a negative side, and that we're seeing just the negative side of that. And it's true to a point. Wokal Distance, I think, is right, is that we are living in the peak of postmodern times. This is the epoch, and we're probably at the peak of postmodernity. We're now living, everyone's engulfed in it, everyone's seeing it, everyone is fully in the postmodern world. We have our first postmodern president, Donald Trump, which I called at the same time. That was my diagnosis, that you want to have a postmodern world. And the postmodern enthusiasts are on the left, unironically brought this postmodern world to kind of fruition, got what they wish. They just don't understand the full context of what postmodernity is, and that it doesn't only adhere to the ways that they want to promote it. So I don't think that there is really a positive in postmodernity. And mainly reason. So I'm going to kind of read off my notes here because I made notes from this last night watching his stream. The two problems with postmodernity is one problem is the untethering to reality and objective truth is a mistake. Postmodernism could have been and can be a powerful tool to explore the greater and different meanings outside of that what we already understood. So every philosophy's goal should be to have a greater understanding, right? Have a broader understanding, to transcend our current knowledge, to become better, to progress, if you will, for the progressives. Unfortunately, postmodernism doesn't really do this, and it's written kind of into the code of postmodernism. Unfortunately, there was an avenue, like as I said, there was a potential for us to deconstruct everything, and in the process of deconstructing and reconstructing, to come up with new ways of knowing, as they say, but like a better way of knowing, a universal way of knowing. So the problem with postmodernism is that disregards that there's any one truth or a universal truth or anything that's better. It's only better for the person who's doing the deconstructing and finding meaning for them. There's no unifying concept in postmodernism. This is one of the faults of it. So postmodernism should have been an expansive philosophy, as I was saying, but it was hijacked early on, and the focus was on deconstructing and thus destroying, and the creation got discarded. So in your deconstruction, what happens in, say, art is you deconstruct let's say a movie. You deconstruct the genres of movies. You deconstruct the style. You deconstruct things, and then when you're putting it back together, you're taking pieces of the things that you deconstructed your artistic genres of all movies for. I use a popular example of a good postmodern film, Pulp Fiction, and I'll use this as I go because Tarantino is probably one of the more popular and more positive postmodern artists that actually embrace it, and this will correlate to the philosophy as well because it's tied together. And so Pulp Fiction is a really positive one. And what's positive is that it deconstructs a bunch of genres, different styles, and it constructs something in a playful way. And it looks like it's searching for something. There's something there to discover. And I'll tell you why you don't really discover anything in his greater works, after all. So it got hijacked into this deconstructing. This deconstruction was the key, and everything, the philosophy and art, focused on deconstructing more than reconstructing. Like, you can deconstruct something, and that's, I think that's even prior to postmodernism. You want to deconstruct something to understand it. So let's say you're taking apart an engine, you're deconstructing it, right? You want to learn how it works. You want to be able to put it together to see how it works. You deconstruct it and reconstruct it, and then you would understand the truth of how it works. Hopefully, you would learn more about how it works. Now, if you want to reconstruct it in a different way, it's probably not going to work as an engine, but you might create something that's new for you. That will be completely useless for anyone else. So here's kind of the key of why postmodernism is a bad philosophy to base your society around. So the main fallacy of postmodernism, so creation gets discarded. The main fallacy of postmodernism is rejecting modernism and previous philosophies. The main problem is not rejecting previous philosophies like modernism and all that. It's the deconstruction of them and putting them back together with a warped and always worse versions of those things, often stitched together, looking like a novice would put it, like a novice painter would do, almost like a collage, right? But it's always a worse version of what it was. So take using liberalism, and you take communism, and you take this and you stitch it together. It's gonna be, and you deconstruct them all, and then you build it back up. It's going to be most likely a worse version because you're not taking the things that work for overall, you're taking the things that work for you. So it's always for you. It's always for the universe. It's not for the universal. Postmodernism's not about universal knowledge. So the second problem with it is it got hijacked with conflict theory. And this only helped aggravate the above, what I previously said. I mean, Benjamin said that there was a positive in postmodernism, but it's only really in the conceptual element of it. And this is kind of the problem, is it feels attractive because it feels like it's creative. You're deconstructing, and there's all these possibilities that you could come out of it with. But you're only working with materials that previously happened. You're not creating something new. You're bastardizing something. You're taking things apart, putting it back together in your way, and calling it a creation. That's not really a creation. That's using other people's work, concepts, ideas, and you're manipulating it to make you feel better, and you feel smarter, and you feel creative. It's not expansive, and there would be an element of expansion or finding something better in that process if it wasn't fundamentally about deconstructing and then hijacked with conflict theory. Conflict theory, which produces the critical theories like critical race theory and Marxism, and was born out of Marxism and all the other critical theories that you see. So if you wanted to do a positive version or have a positive movement in postmodernism, I believe you would need to actually create a separate sect of postmodernism that does focus more on a playful exploration, much like Pulp Fiction was. Pulp Fiction and Tarantino was playfully exploring the postmodern concept of deconstructing something and doing it without malice or nihilism, and taking what he loves from these different things and putting them together and see how if he can create something new. And he created something new in the aspect of, oh, this is different and we like this as a society. So that was kind of the closest thing to a universality of, postmodernism can be universal. But if you think about that movie, it may have changed filmmaking to the aspect of more people would adopt some of its styles. But did it enhance, like, did Pulp Fiction or any of Tarantino's movies make you have a better perception of the world? Did it enlighten you in a different way? Or was it just really fun because it was different? It was probably more fun because it was different. And that's fine. That can inspire some people, and it inspired me. So postmodernism does have in its art, if it's done in a playful manner with the right mindset, there is a possibility for what Benjamin was saying here, is that it could be positive, because and the intention, I think, at the beginning with postmodernism, the possibility is there that it's playful. I want to play around with this stuff and see if we can come up with something better. But the problem with postmodernism is that it doesn't focus on a universal. It rejects a universal, and therefore it only makes better for you whatever you reconstruct things with after deconstructing. You're looking at to be worthwhile to you. And humans don't work this way. Humans need a footing of reality, or a common footing, to feel like they're connected to everyone. We're social creatures. If you deconstruct something for you and say, this is really good, you're going to have people that say, that's not really good. So what happens is that the nihilism, it focuses on the nihilistic deconstruction and the vanity of, it's good for you, it's good for me. And this can be reflective of, like, for instance, look at this YouTube video. I am showing you me. We have phones and cameras everywhere. Do we focus it out on the world? No, most of the time we focus it back on ourselves. TikTok, always about us doing something. Instagram, oh, let me see what I'm doing. Even Twitter, what are my thoughts about this? See, postmodernism is not about projecting something out into the world that we can all accept. It's that, no, this is my reality that I've deconstructed and reconstructed, and this is my narrative. Now we're seeing this play out on a bigger, larger scale with political factions, for example. There's one narrative on the left, and there's one narrative on the right, and then there's a narrative of people who can see that there's narratives going on. You're seeing like critical race theory, for example, and identity politics. They've deconstructed gender or race and reconstructed it. But all it is a bastardized version. So let's take a look at critical race theory. Let's deconstruct what the civilization was of America, for example, what it was, what the race relations were before. And we'll criticize that, but we're going to rebuild it into something that is a hodgepodge mix match. We're just going to deconstruct it, and then we're going to rebuild it, and we'll just swap some of the places of the races around. And instead of going on the path that we were, that was generally getting better with race relations, we're going to go back and regress. And that's the problem with deconstructing and focusing on deconstructing. It's a regressive. It's an inward thing. It's not an outward thing. You're deconstructing to find the meaning deep down in something that already exists, instead of focusing on creating something that is better or something that's outward. It's the antithesis of like a spirituality. It's an antithesis of enlightenment. You're trying to find meaning that has no real meaning, really. If there's no universal meaning, there's only meaning to you, and that's a nihilistic, and that's a narcissistic look at the world, and it's a philosophy that's narcissistic and nihilistic. Its focus is to deconstruct and reconstruct in different ways. So there's no universality. So you'll have these sects of people that believe in these things, and then they have to create their own narrative, and it has meaning for them, but it doesn't have meaning for us. But then you mixed in the conflict theory, and it becomes about power. So the whole process then became about power dynamics within those contexts. So you're mixing in a very like nihilistic, self-absorbed, narcissistic movement that's not about making things better for everyone. It's only making things better for you, or more understanding, or more or more meaning for you. And you're mixing in a conflict theory that's about power. So then you're going to make your narrative, and whatever you've deconstructed to reconstruct is going to be now your narrative, that you must incorporate power in there. So then people gravitate towards that because that gives them power. And they've created these new meanings for them, but people don't want to have individual meanings. They want to have a shared meaning. And the fallacy of postmodernism is you can't, but then people gravitate towards it. So then it becomes these movements, these identity politics. They gravitate towards a shared meaning, which in postmodernism you cannot have a shared meaning. It rejects a shared meaning. And therefore, now that we're getting into the peak of postmodernity, you're going to have these groups in the big dance now. It is front and center, and everyone can see it. Most people can see it. And the thing with postmodernism is it gives no room for a new reality that exists for all of us to accept as a universality. No. It also must be deconstructed. See, there's no end to the deconstruction and reconstruction. This is why it's a pointless it's a pointless philosophy that should have been rejected from the beginning, because there's no end to this. It's consistently tearing down. This is a philosophy of entropy. We're living in a constantly entropic state of reordering, deordering, and reordering, and that's chaos. And so what these groups are now going to find is, now we've all been taught how to deconstruct. You taught us how to deconstruct these things. Now we're going to deconstruct you, and we're going to reconstruct it in our own ways of meaning. If we're going to keep doing on this, we're now in a cycle of why I dislike postmodernism. There's no real out. It's the snake eating its own tail. Constantly deconstructing, reconstructing, deconstructing, reconstructing, deconstructing, reconstructing. If there's no universal knowledge or universal meaning, this goes on forever. There's no expansion. There's no what's next. There's no let me open up our minds to possibilities, to spirituality, to like if you were taking LSD or something, it's the mind expansion, right? That's not deconstructing. That's expanding. And we used to be a people that wanted to expand our enlightenment. We wanted to expand our knowledge. We wanted to expand reason. We wanted to expand existence. And that's the exciting thing, and that's the motivating thing. But when you're trained out of your philosophy and your society to deconstruct, to dismantle, to destroy and create your own narrative, that's not going to generate hope for everyone else, because you're going to be constantly conflicting. Even without conflict theory, you're going to be conflicting with other people. And we as humans don't work like this. We're social creatures, and we need to have at least some common frames of existence and acceptance, and work from a common frame of reference. And like you said, if postmodernism comes up with a common frame of reference, well, that must be deconstructed, because that can't be allowed to exist. You're postmodern. You must deconstruct that and reconstruct it in your own, to find your own meaning in that. And you're seeing that there's a lot of on the right are deconstructing what the left political spectrum is doing now. They see it. They're going to deconstruct the things that we call law is on your side, just like you did with the rights on their side. And that's going to go on forever unless we can find a way out of this. I think, as Wokal Distance said in his interview with Benjamin, that, yeah, we're in it, and there's only one way out, is we have to get through it. Now, if you're looking for hope, the hope is this can't last, because, as I explained, it's chaotic. It's going to eat itself. It's going to crumble in, and people will be tired of this, and they will want something. So there's an absence. There's going to be a power vacuum of spirituality, of reason, of expanding the mind and the spirit and the soul and the creativity. There's going to be an absence for that, and it's up to us who want to move and leave postmodernity behind. And that doesn't mean totally disregard it. There's some, like I said, the playful aspects of it. Let's keep the playfulness. Let's lose the nihilism, the narcissism, the conflict theory. Let's leave that behind and incorporate some playfulness of, doing things differently to see if we can come up with something that's better. But we have to ignore that postmodern fallacy of that it's only better for you. We want to have a shared better. We want to be shared. We want to have a shared experience. And we want to be unified as a people instead of playing power games for the rest of our lives. That was the hope of liberalism. That was the hope of modernity, is that we would move to a place where we don't need to fight amongst each other, and that we would keep expanding into this new frontier with new creativity, new possibilities, new knowledge, better understanding of the world. Let's move towards better understanding. And what we can learn from postmodernism, sorry, I can't speak today. What we can learn from postmodernism is that maybe there's different directions to get there, and that we can try these different ways of deconstructing things, and we can try different ways, but we must always come to that there must be an actual truth. We need to move past the post-truth era and get to the post-truth era. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Kind of rambling at this point. It's kind of a test to see if you guys like this or want me to talk more about this. I can go on and on for how much I detest postmodernism. But hey, like we're in this, so we got to find a way to get through this and create something better on the other side. So if you like this, give it a like, share it, comment on me. I'm on Twitter, oldcanart. Talk to me there, leave comments here. And if you like it, maybe I'll do some more. But anyways, all right, peace out.